Lesson 15, Population Dilemmas in Europe, Part 2. In the last episode, video of this lesson, we talked about population changes in Europe, why they're changing, and we talked about one of the three dilemmas that they are having in Europe right now. The first dilemma we said was a shrinking population, and we talked about the responses to the fact that the population is shrinking. So what parts of Europe are trying to do to make sure that the population starts increasing again. Today we're talking about two different dilemmas, aging population and a declining workforce. So I'm going to start with dilemma number 2, an aging population. Europe is sometimes called the Old Continent because of its aging population. For example, by 2050, the average age of a person in Spain will be 52 years, making the population of Spain one of the oldest in the world. This aging population will also mean more elderly people for Spain to care for. Causes of an aging population. A population ages for two reasons: a rise in life expectancy and a drop in the birth rate. Both trends are currently present across Europe. As a result, there are more elderly people and fewer young people than in the past, which means that Europe has an aging population. Europe will age even more rapidly in the years ahead because of a baby boom from 1945 to the 1960s. A baby boom is a sudden increase in the birth rate. Europe's baby boom began not long after World War II ended. As soldiers returned home and countries recovered from war, marriage rates increased, which in part led to higher birth rates. The average total fertility rate in Europe was greater than 2.5 during much of this period. This means that there is a large population of Europeans born in these baby boom years. However, by the 1970s, birth rates started declining. By 2010, the people born toward the end of Europe's baby boom were entering their 50s. Many baby boomers have already retired, and others will retire in the next decade, swelling the elderly population of Europe. Problems caused by an aging population. Most people would agree that living longer, healthier lives is a good thing. Yet, an aging population also creates problems for a society. In many aging societies, the two biggest concerns are pensions and healthcare. A pension is a fixed amount of money paid to a retired person by a government or former employer. A pension is usually paid from the time a person retires until he or she dies. Healthcare is of concern because as people age, their need for healthcare increases. Older people are more likely than younger people to suffer from such diseases as cancer, diabetes, and arthritis. They are more likely to need expensive surgeries and costly medicines. Some need special care available only in nursing homes. All of these needs cost money. Most European governments provide pension and health care for senior citizens. The money to pay for both comes from taxes paid by working people. This system functions as long as the dependency ratio is low. However, the combination of a growing elderly population and fewer young people joining the workforce is causing the dependency ratio to rise. In other words, an ever smaller workforce is supporting an ever larger elderly population. The simplest solution to rising costs is for governments to budget more money for pensions and healthcare. However, because of the financial crisis in the late 2000s, many governments in Europe, including Spain's, limited or reduced spending. In 2017, Spain was expected to return to or surpass its 2011 spending levels. Responses to an aging population. In 2002, Spain hosted the United Nations Second World Assembly on Aging. Kofi Annan, who was then the United Nations Secretary General, opened the meeting. For the first time in history, he reported older people will soon outnumber younger people. Borrowing a line from a song by the English band The Beatles, Anand asked the assembly, "Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Then he added, "I trust the answer is yes." One of the issues discussed at the United Nations Assembly was how to solve the problem of rising pension costs. With more retired people in Europe than ever before, who are also living longer than in the past, European countries face the challenge of how to support their seniors, and the challenge has grown since the Assembly. One way to reduce pension costs is to cut the amount of money each worker receives. However, cutting pensions too much seems unfair to people who depend on this income to live, and it is generally an unpopular policy. When Greece cut pensions in 2017, pensioners staged massive protests. Another approach is to raise the retirement age. Keeping people in the workforce longer will shorten the time that they will need government pensions. Countries across Europe have already raised the retirement age in recent years, and further increases are scheduled into the 2030s. Also, some countries such as Spain and the Czech Republic have increased the time that a worker must contribute to the system in order to receive a full pension. Governments are also searching for smarter ways to provide health care for their elderly citizens. For example, two relevant principles guide healthcare policies for Germany's elderly population. The first principle is that preventing health problems is better than treating them. The second is that home care is preferable to care in a nursing home. Many countries are looking at ways to encourage family members to care for older relatives at home. Home care costs less and is often preferred by older people. For example, Austria offers financial support for people who provide long-term care for family members. And dilemma number 3 is a declining workforce. In 2004, a German museum opened an exhibit called Shrinking Cities. It showed what happened when a city like Leipzig, Germany, lost most of its workforce. Leipzig's problem began with a drop in the birth rate, which in turn meant an eventual drop in the city's workforce. Faced with a shortage of workers, businesses left the city, and workers followed in search of jobs. Leipzig recovered through a series of development and modernization programs that helped to attract new residents, but the city may be an outlier in Europe's changing demographies. Cause of workforce decline. The main cause of workforce decline across Europe is simple. More workers retire each year than join the workforce. This decline will only grow worse as baby boomers continue to retire. The number of people of working age in Germany, for example, will likely fall from around 49 million to 34 to 38 million by 2060. Workforce decline changes the dependency ratio, the ratio of the dependents to workers, as more people are dependent on fewer workers. In Germany, there were 52 dependents for every 100 workers in 2010. By 2040, estimates show that there will be 76 dependents for every 100 workers. That's a rise of 32% in Germany's dependency ratio. Problems caused by workforce decline. In many European countries, young people have trouble finding jobs. To them, a shrinking workforce may appear to be a good thing, because as older workers retire, there will be more jobs for younger workers. For a business, workforce decline can be problematic. Facing a shortage of skilled workers, businesses may move to other countries, shrink their operations, or close their doors altogether. If this happens to many businesses in a country, the national economy may shrink. Not only does workforce decline cause problems for businesses, but it also poses a big problem for the government. Workers pay most of the taxes that support government programs. Fewer workers will mean less tax money, just at a time when the dependency ratio is rising. Some countries may take steps to fix these problems. The German government has eased immigration restrictions on skilled labor. By accepting refugees, it may increase the working age population. Responses to a declining workforce. In mid-2017, about 700,000 jobs in Germany went unfilled. Employers cannot find enough skilled German workers to fill these positions. This occurred despite the fact that Germany accepted more than 1 million asylum seekers in 2015 and 2016. Some countries in Europe are trying to slow workforce decline. One approach is to keep older workers working longer. In Germany, for example, companies retrain older workers and adjust workplaces to better suit the needs of these workers. Other countries encourage older people to work part-time or at home. Another approach to slowing workforce decline has been to encourage more women to join and then stay in the workforce. In the past, a woman often left the workforce after having her first child because she found it difficult to balance work and family life. However, the gender gap in employment rates has plateaued in recent years, and the gap between men and women aged 20 to 24 is half of the gap in older age groups. In recent years, European governments have realized how crucial family-friendly work policies are to retaining women in the workforce. We read earlier about such policies as giving parents paid time off work when they have a baby, allowing flexible work schedules, and ensuring quality childcare. By helping women balance work and family, governments hope to make staying in the workforce appealing. Another way to address the problem of workforce decline is to look for workers outside of Europe. One way to find these workers is to move jobs once performed in Europe to different parts of the world. For example, the German company Volkswagen has only 28 production plants in Germany, but 92 in other countries, including Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, and the United States. A second way is to find additional workers is to encourage immigration to Europe. Not all Europeans, however, welcome this idea. They worry that immigration may cause more problems than it solves. Alright, let's sum it up. In this lesson, you learned about the demography, the study of human populations, and how they change. You learned how a type of graph called a population pyramid shows the population makeup of a country. These graphs show whether a particular population is likely to grow, stay the same, or decline. You also learned that most countries in Europe will face negative population growth in the future. This will happen because the total fertility rate has dropped below the replacement rate. In other words, women are not having enough babies to replace the people who die each year. At the same time, Europe's population is aging because life expectancy is rising. Negative population growth in Europe poses several problems, including an increase in dependency ratios. Most retired Europeans depend on their government for pensions and health care. Governments in turn depend on taxes paid by working people to pay for these benefits. However, with declining populations, there are fewer workers each year to pay those taxes at the same time that there are more older people depending on those taxes for support. Europe is not the only place with an aging population. Developed countries and other world regions are seeing the same population trends. Japan, for example, is aging as rapidly as Europe, if not faster. Many developing countries are seeing different population trends than developed countries. In developing countries, total fertility rates are dropping more slowly, and life expectancy is rising slowly as well. For example, in Nigeria, the total fertility rate in 2017 was 5.4 children per woman. Life expectancy for a child born that year was 54 years. As a result, Nigeria's population is young and still growing. That's it for this lesson here. Remember our essential question at the very beginning. How do population trends affect a country's future? Think about that because that'll be a question on your assignment today. When we meet back up to talk about this next time, we're going to be discussing invisible borders and transboundary pollution in Europe. It's so much fun stuff. I cannot wait to read this lesson with you next week. I hope you have an amazing weekend. Goodbye.